What you're telling me that the reason you placed your daughter in foster care was because she was a behavior problem.
And my health. Yes.
Welcome to Miss Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 most emotional Judge Judy moments.
So you left a 6 and a 2-year-old alone in the back of the car while you were discussing with his sister going to a strip club later on that evening. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, ma'am.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most defining moments from this reality court show that are heart-wrenching, heartwarming, or maybe a bit of both. Did we miss a case that had you tearing up? Let us know down below. Number 10, an uninvited baby mama. Callie Carter, the plaintiff, tried suing the father of her children, Quentin Fitchard, after an altercation between them took place at his mother's home. Her story begins to fall apart when Judge Judy grills her on the hot bench.
There would have been no good reason for him to invite you to his mother's house and have his new girlfriend there. No good reason. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
The more we learn about the case, the more we feel for Quentin.
When I turn around, it's her. I say, what are you doing? What's going on? I came to get the money. Okay, why did you just pull up? You could have called me or anything.
Through some pinpoint prodding, we find out that Akali might have problems with boundaries, controlling Quentin's rights as a father, and possibly some ill will towards his girlfriend. This is a dreary case, especially considering that it involves children. But watching Fitchard's face light up when he learns about filing for a paternity order makes it seem a bit brighter.
You made a baby and you have the responsibility to support that child and you have the right to see that child. And he doesn't want to see you anymore.
Number 9, trying to keep his kids. Parents have to make some tough choices when it comes to their kids, but this one just breaks our hearts. Carmela Minacci and her mother-in-law Nancy aim to sue the father of Carmela's kids, Joshua Mendez, for claiming her children on his taxes.
Mr. Menendez claimed the 2 boys on his tax returns for the year 2016.
Right. And I don't know why, because he didn't see them in that year.
Judge Judy tries to establish a timeline of the events and makes it clear to everyone how unfit Carmela and Nancy were as caregivers.
And in October of 2016, Child Protective Services is going to remove all the children because both of them are drug involved.
It's then that we stumble upon the gut-wrenching decision Joshua had to make when he fell on some really tough times.
Didn't want to do it, but due to being homeless at the time and not actually having a place to stay, I thought it was a good idea, which was my stupidity, thinking that the kids can stay with their mother until then.
He ended up on the streets and decided to give up custody of his kids so they could live a better life. Just rip our hearts out, why don't you? Number 8, a Marine gets swindled. Eddie Elder, a Marine, has a strong need to give back to his community, which is why he tried to help Michael McKenty get back on his feet. He welcomed him with open arms by letting McKenty into his home, buying him a truck for his job, and even paying for an acupuncture session.
He paid for everything. He drove me up in his car.
So he came down to California.
He came down the first that I met him. He gave me an acupuncture appointment. I had never met him before and told me to meet him there. So
this charming veteran managed to pull a chuckle from our favorite judge too.
I only fear God and you a little bit.
Well, Mr. Elder, I hope in that order.
We later learn that McKenty filed a protective order against Elder, besmirched his name, and also claimed that Elder had stolen money from him.
You lived with him from May 30th until August 9th.
Right.
On what date did you file for a protective order?
August 28th, I would say.
So it was after you moved out.
Yes.
It's awful to see someone so compassionate get conned, but justice was certainly served in Judy's courtroom.
Your Honor, no good deed will go unpunished.
Number 7, who broke the baby's leg?
Now, your 4-month-old child had a broken leg.
Yes.
And you dropped him off at the daycare. He was fine.
That morning, he was perfectly fine.
If you're a parent, this might be your worst nightmare. Due to some obvious and appalling negligence on the part of Heather Scherer, the woman who was running a daycare center, an infant was severely injured.
If the state of Idaho doesn't take away your license to take care of other people's children, I have no idea who's running that shop. No idea. Outrageous.
The plaintiff's 9-year-old child was playing pretty rough with their newborn, but instead of separating them, the daycare worker just asked the 9-year-old to play nicely. This line actually made Judge Judy angry laugh at how absurd that was.
So what did you do?
I asked him to please stop.
You asked him, according to you, I told him to pick up the baby and play nicely.
Correct.
You're an idiot.
It is agonizing to hear the mother talk about what happened in gruesome detail and the daycare worker standing by her position.
Like his leg was bent out to the side and it wasn't moving.
Nobody knows that the accident happened in my care.
We're just glad that the baby is okay. Number 6, being woken up with boiling water. Living with someone who struggles with an addiction is not easy. But instead of kindness and understanding, Kylie Jones was met with boiling hot water being poured on her as she slept. Her roommate at the time was sick of her addiction and decided that scolding her was a reasonable way to deal with it.
She reports that someone dumped a pot of boiling water onto her lap. Patient reports at the times that this occurred, she was wearing no clothes. Patient presents to the emergency room wearing a hospital Johnny. She cannot tell me why she is wearing this.
As soon as she tries to spin the story her way, Judge Judy shuts her down and focuses on Kylie.
But the medical records, what the doctors observed of where the injuries were on her inner thigh, are totally inconsistent with this story that you just told me.
She gives her a stern talking to about her drug use, but quickly shifts to a softer tone and assures her that what happened was not right.
What she did was terrible.
Yeah.
They didn't take you seriously.
Yeah.
And that is not an excuse for them. But part of the reason they didn't take you seriously is because you were your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's it.
Seeing Kylie whimper her agreement makes our eyes water every time. Number 5, a mother abandoned her daughter.
Ms. Hammond, I gather your answer, your response to your mother's complaint is that she wasn't much of a mother, that this was the least that she could do when you were in trouble.
Family members suing each other is a recipe for heartbreak, but this one takes the cake. Vivian Hammond was trying to receive reparations for putting her daughter's electricity bills in her name. After looking at the bare facts, Judge Judy prods the plaintiff a little more, and she discovers that Vivian had voluntarily given up her daughter to social services when she was just 10 or 8. There's a bit of an argument there, due to supposed behavioral issues.
About 3 years old, my daughter started exhibiting behavioral issues. And what I mean by that was
Don't speak.
stealing, lying, swearing, and it continually got worse.
Judge Judy is far from pleased after hearing this, and makes that very clear.
I'm not following the whole story. All I know is usually when you have a child who's 10 years old who's a behavior problem, you don't send that child to live with strangers, especially if you only have one child that you have to deal with.
You can see how distressed and disheartened her daughter is as her mother pleads her case, and it's pretty difficult to watch. Number 4, a man's best friend brings him to tears. You're probably feeling a little down after these last few entries, so here's something to cheer you up. In this case, a man was reunited with his kidnapped dog.
Put the dog.
That's baby boy. Hey, boy. Hey, baby boy.
Madam.
Hey, man.
The defendant claimed that she had purchased the dog and that it was rightfully hers.
The question is this his dog?
Judge Judy, being the professional that she is, heard both sides before going all King Solomon in the courtroom. She asked the dog to be brought in, which made the spectating audience gush. But what hit us right in the feels is when Judge Judy asked for the dog to be placed on the floor.
Put the dog down. Put the dog down.
Don't.
Yes, that's him. That's baby boy.
That's baby boy.
He does that to everybody, Miss Your Honor.
This little pooch darts straight for the man and makes him bawl his eyes out. Number 3, grieving mother sued for non-payment of son's burial. When it comes to a case as sensitive and saddening as this, there are no real winners. A funeral home owner had to sue a woman who had not paid her dues for her son's funeral.
You wanted a proper burial for your son, which you considered was a proper burial.
Yes, ma'am.
The company did offer a free burial service to her, but the defendant, Cheryl Torres, wasn't keen on that. She asked for a proper funeral, which cost her $3,000, even though she was not able to pay for it.
Of course, what I assume is you did a funeral for her that she was satisfied with. but ultimately she did not get this grant.
That is correct.
The part that stings is when Judge Judy tries to understand why Cheryl would choose an option that she couldn't afford.
And then why did you stop?
And it's not that I so much stopped, it's that it was getting too hard that my bills weren't fitting with everything else.
This was a clear-cut case, and thankfully, it wasn't drawn out too long. Number 2, Judy gives a drug user some advice.
Did you ask her for money for a drug test?
Yes, yeah.
On what date? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly the date.
On what date did he ask you for money for a drug test?
Jason Stemple was not in a good place when he appeared on Judge Judy. He had borrowed money from the plaintiff under the pretense of spending it on a drug test.
And he told me that I had to move out, and he said he'd paid for the drug test, and I said there was no way you could have paid for a drug test at 9:30 at night.
And he said?
Eventually I got it out of him that he had paid for heroin.
He obviously is in the wrong, but the combination of being unable to answer simple questions and his general confusion will make you feel horrible. Judge Judy ruled in favor of the plaintiff and then gave him some strict but sincere guidance.
You need some help. Do you understand? Okay? If you need us to assist you in getting some help, we could do that. But I'm going to suggest to you, you're 31 years old. If you want to be 32 years old, you better get yourself some help.
She offered to help him out, and the toll the weight of her words takes on him is plain in his expression. Before we continue, be